Okay. Hi there. Uh, we're going to be doing the next Mesopotamia video, and where we talk about Mesopotamian religion and the role of religion in Mesopotamian life, and so on and so forth. So awesome. How is that? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyway, I talked last time about uh, Mesopotamian culture and sort of how it arose in these areas that we call the cradles of civilization. And so this time I'm going to tell you a little bit about the kind of culture that they had, what life was like for them in Mesopotamia, specifically with reference to their religion. Now, back in the old hunter-gatherer days, Um, you know, back in the old hunter-gatherer days, religion was the type of religion practiced was something that we call animism. So I'm gonna show you a little animism. This is the belief that there is a spirit in everything. So there's a spirit of the wind, a spirit of the rain, spirit of the bushes, a spirit of wolves and bears and blah 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 blah. Um, so uh, as we move into a time where writing is happening, again, which I talked about last video, as we move into a time where writing is happening, which coincides with the discovery of bronze and the concentration of resources in an agricultural society, we get uh, theology. We get the idea that this nebulous concept of spirits that reside in nature is made more complex into stories of gods. It's no longer just a spirit of the bush or a spirit of the rain or whatever. There are gods. They have stories, they have personalities attached to them, they have interrelationships that are laid out according to the sets of beliefs about them, and so on and so forth. So this is what we call polytheism. So this is the worship of multiple gods. Okay. So anyway, uh, so the ancient Mesopotamians were Bronze Age Mesopotamians, starting with the Sumerians and then moving on to the other Mesopotamian societies that existed after them, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, so on and so forth. The ancient Mesopotamians were polytheists. They believed in multiple gods that ruled over different aspects of the world. Um, this was not. So, how many of you have studied? Uh, Look at me. I'm asking. It's like I'm expecting you to raise your hands. Yeah, go ahead. Raise your hand. I won't be able to see you. This is a video. Anyway. Um. Okay. Professor Dumbass. Paging Professor Dumbass. Anyway. Um. A lot of you have probably studied mythology, like Greek mythology or Norse mythology or something like that. You've probably studied it as literature in some of your English classes. I can imagine we did it in seventh grade when I was in school. Um, but this is not this mythology that they had, these stories that they had of the gods were not just for entertainment. Um, this was their way of understanding how the world worked. Um, the sun comes up because the god of the sun makes it come up, or maybe he is the sun, or whatever, depending on the specific mythology. Um, the rain happens because the rain god makes it happen. That's that's one thing I really need you to understand, is that these mythologies weren't just stories. They weren't entertainment. They were literally what these people had instead of what we would now fill that role with science. I can explain to you the water cycle. Why does the rain happen? Well, groundwater evaporates into the air where it condenses into clouds, and then eventually there's enough water condensed in the air, and the weather, and it turns cool enough that uh, the clouds will rain will happen, and the water falls back to earth, and then it repeats. That's our explanation for why does it rain. Their explanation for why does it rain would be because the rain god makes it rain. Um, so this wasn't just a set of stories or entertainment. This was a set of beliefs about how the world operated. Okay, so that's one of the first things you need to understand. The next thing that you need to understand is the idea that this was not, this concept of religion that they had was not a moral um, concept of religion. Uh, Today, especially in the West, in Western societies, like most in Europe and in America and everything like that. Um, Nowadays, we believe in, or at least it is common to believe in, religions that are interested in making you a better person. That's what Christianity and Judaism and Islam are supposedly about. They are interested in your moral character and trying to improve you as an individual, ultimately with the goal of, some kind of salvation, usually, is what's going on there. But uh, these were not religions that were focused on the concept of salvation or on the concept of moral improvement. In fact, while there was a concept of sin, which is to say that there was a concept of offending a god. You could do something that would annoy or upset the god, and that was a sin. Um, the concept did not have a moral overtone. It's not that these religions were trying to teach you to be a good person. So, what were they? What was the point of this ancient polytheistic religion? Well, the main point in these ancient polytheistic religions was to, not to put too fine a point on it, the main idea was to get shit done. These were what we call transactional religions. Transactional religion, a religion where the followers believe they bribe the gods with offerings. Transactional religion. Um, these these religions were transactional in the sense that the gods are the ones who run everything in the world, and if you want to get anything done, you have to make offerings and prayers and so on and so forth to the gods, and then they will, or they might, do the thing that you are asking them to do. So there's a transaction going on. The people of these ancient Mesopotamian societies would go to the temples and they would make offerings and they would have the priests raise prayers and things like that. And in return, the idea was that the god in question would maybe do something for them. And that was the extent of it. Um, Worship wasn't about saving your soul. There was no concept of a paradisical afterlife, like the soteriological religions of Christianity and Islam have. There was no concept of that. There was no concept of being redeemed in some way. None of that existed. And that's a very alien viewpoint for people raised in Western society with its foundations in Christianity. It's a very weird place to come from when you're thinking about religion. There was no concept of being saved. There was just the concept of getting things done, of making these transactions. That's why sometimes I refer to these religions as public works religions, because it has the same, there's the same kind of attitude that you have towards public works projects like OG&E or the water department or something like that. I don't believe in OG&E. I just pay them and I get electricity. And if something happens to my electricity, I call them and ask them what I need to do to get my electricity back. There's no, like, OG&E isn't going to, like, save me from a life without electricity if I believe in it hard enough or something like that. I don't go around preaching the gospel of OG&E to people. I just pay them and I get my electricity. And this is how you need to think about how the ancient Mesopotamians thought about their religion. They didn't go around preaching belief in the gods. The gods just existed, right? It's like I don't have to tell you to believe in the sun. The sun is there, baby. It's there. And similarly, an ancient Mesopotamian would not tell you to believe in the sun god. The sun god just is. How do you know the sun god exists? Because the sun keeps coming up. Look, that's simple enough, right? How do you know that the rain god exists? Because it rains. It keeps raining. That's how we know the rain god exists. Duh. So anyway, uh, this transactional religion is rooted in the idea that the gods run everything and that they're the ones who get things done. So this is what we refer to as theocentrism, the belief that the gods are more important than humans. Um, that's not very well stated. The belief that the gods are more important than humans. Let me see if I can put some flesh on that concept. Um, the ancient Mesopotamians believed that the world was created by the gods, of course, but they also believed that gods and monsters, things more powerful than humans, lived in the world and caused everything important to happen. Why do sometimes babies die? Because there's a horrible monster called the Lamia that steals their life in the nighttime or something like that. Why do people get sick? Because there's a god of death and disease, Irish Kigal, who brings disease to people sometimes and makes them die. Um, and good things. Why does it rain? Because of the rain god. Why does the sun come up? Because of the sun god. Blah, blah, blah. Why do the crops grow? Because Inanna, the goddess of crops and agriculture, makes the crops grow. Everything important that happened because these gods and monsters made it happen. Now, why is this a belief that the gods are more important? Because it's very different from the way that we look at the world now. Um, I recently read an article where they are working on customized vaccines that will activate your body's immune system to fight cancer. One of the big problems with cancer is that Your cells are growing out of control, but your body doesn't recognize it as something it's supposed to stop because it's your own cells. It's not an invading organism. It's just your own stuff. And they are working on a way to trick the body into seeing the cancer as something that needs to be stopped so that your immune system will fight it. That's super impressive. That's just crazy pants. Um, the idea that if someday, maybe in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, someday, uh, it could be the case that if you get cancer, instead of having to go get chemotherapy and radiation therapy and have surgery and all that, they may just be able to give you an injection and your own immune system will take care of it. That's bonkers. It's awesome, but it's wild to think about. Now, why does that happen? Well, because a bunch of people worked very hard and did the science, and they're working on making it happen. When that comes to pass, if and when that comes to pass, it will be because people did it. Um, and that's a very different way of looking at the world. Um, that is a way of looking at the world that we refer to as humanism. The idea that humans are important and can know and control their world. That is humanism. Uh, and humanism and theocentrism are two different and opposed ideas. They are in opposition to each other. Theocentrism is the belief that everything important happens because of some gods or monsters that exist in the world, whereas humanism is the belief that humans have a big say in what goes on in the world. So, the ancient Mesopotamians were not humanists. They did not have a humanist view of the world. They had a theocentric view of the world because they believed that these important things that went on in the world were caused by something other than humans. And humans had a very small part in anything. Um, if humans wanted to do anything to control their world, well, they couldn't really. Humans in and of themselves couldn't really control their world. The best they could do was ask the gods nicely through worship. Ask the gods nicely to do something for them. Humans can't make the crops grow. Humans can do all the things that they're supposed to do. They can lay out the crops and everything like that. And then they pray to the god or goddess of the crops and hope that the best happens. That's it. If you want to make your crops grow, yeah, you plant them and you fertilize them and everything, but only because you know that's what you're supposed to do. And then you ask the gods to make them grow and hope that they do. Ta-da! Um, the idea was that ultimately everything that happens in the world is up to the gods, these gods and monsters. So it's not a humanist way of looking at the world. So, okay. Mesopotamian religion. Polytheistic. Belief that there are gods that run everything. Every major aspect of reality has a god that corresponds to it. It is theocentric, their culture. A belief that these gods are the main forces that control everything that happens, and that if you want to get anything done, you have to go to them and ask for it to be done. It is transactional, which is the relationship I just described. Humans give offerings and worship to the gods, and in return, the gods do nice things for them, hopefully. So, the nature of ancient Mesopotamian religion is very different from the nature of religion in the modern world. Most religions, well, not most religions, but the dominant religions in Western culture the Christian tradition in Western culture, is none of these things. It is not polytheistic. It is monotheistic, meaning that there is only one God. Um, it is humanistic. It might sound weird to say that a religion is humanistic, but it is. In the Christian tradition, God created the entire world for the benefit of humans. And humans are capable of controlling the world. They're capable of impacting the world and doing things that have an effect on the world. God has given them that power. And God, yeah, God is in charge of everything in the broad sense of it, but in the day-to-day affairs, humans control what happens in their world, and God kind of lets them control what happens in their world because they have free will, and they either do good things or they do bad things, and that's what goes on. Um, a lot of Christians believe that the entire system of reality, the entire system of creation and everything exists for the purpose of making humans better or worse, morally speaking, and saving their souls or what have you. Um, and that is a very humanistic viewpoint that puts humans at the center of the picture. Um, okay. Uh, let's see here. That's the big differences there. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about. Here, hang on a second. Let me. Okay. Okay. Um. All right. Couple of other terms I want to throw at you now that I've outlined sort of the basic concept of Mesopotamian religion and the broad strokes of how it worked and what people thought about it. Um, so the Mesopotamians were polytheists, but they were also what we call henotheists. All right, henotheism, a version of polytheism where there is one God who is more important, a chief God, if you will. Um, so most Mesopotamian religions that existed at that time, they were polytheistic, of course, but they were henotheistic in the sense that, generally speaking, every city, and I talked about city-states in the other video, every city state had its own god, a kind of god of that city-state. Like, imagine that there is a god of, imagine that the driller is the god of Tulsa, right? That big guy they got standing outside the fairgrounds. Imagine he's the god of Tulsa. Um, and so, like, there are other gods. There's rain gods and there's other things. But there's also a local god, the god of Tulsa. And he's the one that you have to ask for anything that has to do with the city. And so that means that he's going to be super important in the lives of a lot of people in Tulsa because, you know, we all live here and a lot of stuff has to do with the city. If we want the potholes fixed, we have to ask the driller. Rather than, you know, the rain god or the sun god or something. You know, the rain and the sun, those are important, sure. But we live in Tulsa, so the local Tulsa god, the driller, is going to be super important to us. That was kind of how it worked with them. They had every major city had its own gods, and when the cities would go to war with each other, it was basically seen as a contest between those gods. So, like the city gods were fighting it out through the armies of those cities. So anyway, oftentimes what would happen is if one city conquered another, they would capture the gods, the statues, and the stuff that are in the temples. They would take them and hide them away somewhere to show that those gods have been humiliated and defeated by the other cities' gods. So anyway, so that's henotheism. It's a type of polytheism. It's not different from polytheism, it's just a type of polytheism. Um, Sort of like Levi's are a type of blue jeans. There's not blue jeans and then Levi's, which are a completely different thing. Levi's are just a type of blue jeans. So there's blue jeans and then there's Levi's. There's polytheism and then there's henotheism, which is a type of polytheism. Okay. Um, so the last important concept I want to talk to you about is kind of abstract, but it's what we call the mythological worldview. The ancient Mesopotamians, they had this transactional idea of how to relate to their gods. They had the idea that the gods ran everything and that humans themselves were not very important. They had this idea that there were multiple gods that had all these histories and stories relating to them, how they relate to each other, how they interact with each other, why they're the god of the thing they're god of, so on and so forth. All of this comes together to make up what we call a mythological worldview. This is going to be one of the hardest concepts I have to explain. These people did not believe in a world that functioned according to laws that we could uncover through study and science. They just didn't believe in that. They believed in a world that functioned on the logic of stories, of myths. I told you their myths were their idea of how the world worked. I wasn't kidding around. If you think that a story is an accurate description of how the world works, then that means that you think that the world runs on story logic to a certain extent. Let me give you an example that you might be able to relate to. Before I got this job, I was on the job market. I was trying to get a teaching job. Teaching jobs are hard to come by. They're difficult to get. And I applied at a lot of places, and I had a lot of heartbreak as I just missed them on this job or that job. There was one job I thought for sure I was going to get. And it wasn't for any logical reason. If I thought about it logically, if I thought about it from a neutral, objective point of view, if I thought about it from the point of view of statistics and the laws of economics and things like that, there is no reason that I particularly would get that job. I was one of several hundred people who applied. It was, I wasn't necessarily any better or worse than other people. There was no reason to think that I would get that job if looked at from a cold, dispassionate point of view. But part of me really believed I was going to get that job because we were at a real low point and money was tight, and getting that job would have just turned everything around, and it would have been the perfect end to the story. Everything would have just come together so nicely, right? I don't know if you've ever felt like that about anything, where you've on some level believed something would happen because that's what would make a better story. That's what should happen. If there's any justice in the world, sometimes we say that, if there's any justice in the world, what will happen is blah, 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 blah. I didn't get the